My road name is Flatlander Frank, and I've been a truck driver for over 30 years. One could argue that I know the highways and byways of this country better than most, or at least I thought I did, until this past winter when I got stuck in an abnormal storm and an even more abnormal situation. My truck had pulled out of South Dakota on an unbearably cold and snowy evening, headed southeast on Highway 2 in the sandhills of Nebraska. A visually stunning and often desolate drive that can put you 400 miles into nowhere before you know what has hit you. I had done this drive before, but this was different. The snow was coming down with a blinding fury, and before I knew it, making sense of where the shoulder began and the road ended was becoming a daunting task. As fate would have it, my check engine indicator came on and I began to look for a place to pull off. Of course, my options were limited, but I spotted the remains of an old abandoned gas station along the roadside. And before I could pull all the way in, I felt my motor cut off and I came to a reluctant stop only a few feet off the road. I could make the name of the gas station out based on what was left of the sign. Miller's Gas and General Store. It was little after midnight and I had radioed dispatch to let them know about my breakdown. But because of the damned storm, the service truck wouldn't be able to get out to me until late morning. That's just great, I said aloud after getting the news. I looked around and couldn't make heads or tails of anything. So I turned the radio up and began to doze off to the sound of the endless weather updates. I was awakened by a man's voice on the CB. "Say, trucker, you okay over there?" I grabbed the receiver. "This is Flatlander Frank. Come back, trucker." "Are you in need of help over there?" the voice replied. I was baffled. There I was in the middle of nowhere. Not a sign of life in sight, let alone another truck. And someone knew I was there. "Where you at, trucker? You can see me?" There was a pause. "We're right across the street." I grew more confused. I couldn't see out of my windshield, let alone across the street. This time a woman's voice came through. "Sir, we're not truckers." I reached over, opened my glove box, removed my pistol, and set it on the seat next to me, lifting the receiver back to my mouth. "If you're not in a rig, given that I can't see you, do you mind telling me who you are?" I glanced up to see a light some distance across from me. It was slowly getting closer. The woman's voice returned. "My husband can explain. We'll see you soon." I cocked the pistol, moving it from my seat to my thigh. A moment or two later, the silhouette of a man appeared, and he approached my window. I rolled the window down and saw a dark-skinned man in his late 60s holding a flashlight and kindly waving to me. "Looks like they won't be here to get you till sometime tomorrow." "Yeah, they're saying late morning." "Why don't you come with me? You'd be much comfier with me and my missus," the man said with a friendly smile. "And where exactly is with you, friend?" I asked, still unsure of who this man was and where he was trying to take me. "Forgive me," he began with a chuckle under his breath. "My name is Maurice Wilson, and my wife Minnie and me, we have an old bed and breakfast right across the street here. If you're going to wait out the storm, why don't you do it near a fire? Save some of that fuel. You're going to need it to get out of here. Ain't no working gas stations left for several miles." The man was right. I did need to save on my fuel supply. "I wouldn't be putting you all out by coming by till morning?" I asked with caution. "No, sir, not at all. We're happy to help a friend in need. Come on with me." I stuffed my pistol into my overnight bag and exited the truck. Maurice was a kindly-looking man with a genuine smile. We shook hands, but I could barely feel anything, as the cold was bordering on unbearable. "I'm Frank, Flatlander Frank," I said, finally letting my guard down a bit. I began to walk with the man. Had it been a clear night, I'd have seen the Sand Hills Bed and Breakfast sign from where I'd been parked. The place was an old log cabin design with the glow of the fireplace illuminating the snow-covered trees outside. When we got to the door, we were greeted by Minnie, a petite lady about his age, who, like Maurice, was still dressed for work, even in the middle of the night. "Why aren't you two asleep?" I asked with a curious smile. Minnie smiled back at me and took my hand. "Well, we don't keep normal hours. Sometimes we're here, ready to help. Sometimes we go and rest. It all depends. Right now, you're in need of some help, so we're ready to help you," she said with a charming smile, letting go of my hand and walking toward the kitchen. "I come through here a few times a year. I don't recall ever noticing this place before, though," I said, perplexed at the thought of having never seen such a neat little spot along Highway 2. "Oh, we're easy to miss," said Maurice with a laugh. "Ain't too much out here. And in the dead of night or in a storm like this, you can blow right by here and not even know it." Minnie came through the door with a plate of food for me. Roasted turkey, mashed potatoes, and some leafy greens. I hadn't eaten in over 12 hours at the time, so I began to salivate looking at the plate. "Here you go, sugar. You enjoy now," she said, placing the plate in front of me and walking back toward the kitchen. Maurice leaned over with a wink. "See? You broke down at the right spot," he said, getting up and heading towards the kitchen himself. "Enjoy your meal now." We exchanged a smile, and I dug into what was some awesome late-night dinner. And as I finished, Maurice and Minnie came back into the room. "You can sleep in that room over there," Minnie said, pointing at the nearby doorway. "Or you can rest right here by the fire if you like," Maurice added. I sat up, knowing I'd likely not move from the comfort of my current spot. "I'm okay here?" I asked. "You're just fine, sugar," Minnie said with a motherly smile. I thanked them, and they excused themselves for bed. I fell asleep to the howls of the storm mixed with the crackling of the fire, and I dreamed that the fire was raging all around me, trying its best to consume me. I tried. I fought like hell to keep it at bay, but it kept growing and growing, eating up much of the room. Right as it was about to engulf me, I came to, and it was right at sunrise. Sitting on the table next to me, where I had been sleeping, was a note. "We'll be on the porch for a bit, and then we have to go. If we don't see you before you leave, it was a pleasure having your company for the night." I found Maurice and Minnie sitting on the porch together as I opened the door to leave. "Thank you both so much," I began. "I really appreciate your kindness and hospitality." "You're very welcome, Frank," said Minnie. "I hope to see you all the next time I'm out this way." They both smiled. "You might just do that," said Maurice, standing up to shake my hand one last time. I stepped off the porch and into the street to find the storm had passed and the road was manageable. When I reached my truck, I noticed that it fired right up without incident. So I called over to dispatch and told them to cancel the service truck. I had lost about 6 hours in total, but I could make that up if the road stayed clear, so I wasted no time getting moving. I made it about 80 miles when I stopped to fuel up and hit a restroom. The old man running the service station walked over to me as I returned. "You came through that storm overnight?" he asked with a raised brow. "No. I stopped over there at the Sand Hills Bed and Breakfast. Maurice and Minnie. You know them? They're great people." The man froze. "Maurice and Minnie? Wilson?" he asked, stepping back and looking confused. "Yeah, Maurice and Minnie Wilson. Right there across the street from what's left of Miller's Gas and General Store." The man looked at me as though I was insane. "You stopped off at the Sand Hills B&B and spoke with Maurice and Minnie Wilson last night?" he asked with an almost raised and alarmed voice. "Yes," I shot back. "What the hell's so hard to believe about that?" The man looked at me with a hard glare. It's kind of impossible, son, considering they're deceased. How on earth are they deceased when they fed me and put me up last night? I almost shouted. No clue, mister, but they died in a fire back in the early 1970s. That place ain't stood since, he said. The man began to walk away, signaling to one of his co-workers. Harold, you ain't gonna believe what this fella just told me, he started as he walked off. I was in my truck and racing back towards Maurice and Minnie's before the man could even finish his story. I don't recall ever, in my 30 years of trucking, driving that fast. Had the law seen me, and I'd have lost my license and been handed one hell of a fine, if nothing else. I must have drove those 80-plus miles in a little over 55 minutes, finally seeing the sign for Miller's Gas and General Store as I rounded the bend. Only this time, I couldn't see Maurice and Minnie's place across the street. Only a bit of grass and what looked like the remains of a fire. I pulled my truck into the abandoned gas station and raced across the road. There was nothing but the base of an old fireplace, the very fireplace I had slept next to only hours prior, and a few scattered bricks adorning the lot. There had definitely been a fire, but it had surely been some years back. I began to tell myself I had dreamed the whole thing after falling asleep in my truck. But how would that explain the guy at the service station knowing Maurice and Minnie by name, or the name of their lodge? Gripped with panic and confusion, I turned to face my truck and noticed a piece of paper getting kicked up by the wind, wafting right towards me. I picked it up and noticed that it had been mostly destroyed by fire. But then I saw it, the familiar phrase, penned by a familiar hand, a phrase I had read earlier that morning. I stared down at the paper in utter disbelief, as around the burned edges of what remained, I could make out one line. We'll be on the porch for a bit, and then we have to go.